Hello again. This is Foghorn with another installment of Flight School Academics for this, the 5th of April, 2955 or 2025 if you're stuck in the past. This presentation is part of an ongoing series of academics for the members of the Aurora Republic, the premier role-playing organization and Star Citizen. If you're new to the Aurora Republic or visiting for the very first time, let me start by saying welcome. Glad to have you with us. Love to hear from you if you're interested in hearing more from us. We're a lawful organization focused on role-play or exploration and social interaction, and are currently active and recruiting on both Spectrum and Discord. Okay, tonight, Basic Aviation 100 Alpha, Cockpit Fam, and all of the new stuff, because it all has changed since we did this last year. So, yep, all that stuff. We're going to go haul ass through it. Lots of pictures to look at, lots of things to point out. So if you are old folks coming back who ain't been here in a while and haven't played in a while, yeah, this might be fairly valuable because they've moved a lot of crap around inside the cockpit. So cockpit switches, they are intended to be as interactable as they can make them. So they are all hotspots, and you can find them down where you see physical switches or physical buttons on the actual dash of your of the main instrument panel on your spacecraft in the cockpit there. They can be all over the place. They're starting to look like actual levers. This is an arrow, by the way, so now it actually has like a landing gear handle over on the left. And then, of course, like it always has, it can also be out in places where there isn't actual physical switches, like hovering out in the glass, such as up towards the canopy if you're in a single-seater, for things like exiting to 0G, and over in the left and right canopy glass for like exiting out of the spacecraft and that stuff. And then also don't forget, you can also look down into the cockpit at the actual consoles left and right, slightly off screen from this picture. And there might even be switches down there. So they can be just about anywhere in the cockpit, and you just kind of, each spacecraft can be different. Each spacecraft cockpit can be different as far as where stuff is laid out. So if it's something you don't fly regularly, then you probably is worth a little bit of time for you to sit in there for a sec, hold F, and look around inside the cockpit to figure out where all the switches are, if you're going to use the visual cockpit interface to interface with the spacecraft instead of using hotkeys and keybinds to peripheral equipment. Cockpit switches that are operational nowadays, all the standard stuff you're used to of opening and closing exteriors and canopies and ladders and locking and unlocking and turning stuff on and turning stuff off, getting in and out of the seat, flight readies, that kind of stuff. You're seeing a lot more enter remote turrets now for those things that are a remote turret, whether it's a weapons turret or a utility turret, like tractor beam turrets and stuff like that. Exiting 0G, jettison cargoes for those things that are carrying explosive cargoes. With the tweaks to the player UI UX, user interface and user experience. Now, when you just look around, even without holding F, when you look around, a lot of hot spots will show up with the F and a square, and it'll be, if you were to hold F and right click, you would get the radial menu, and whatever is the top default one, if you're not holding F and you just look and it shows the little F and a square, if you tap F, that'll be whatever the default on that button is, and you can actually change it by going in with the right click and the radial menu and assign those kind of things too. So it's got a lot more flexibility nowadays, and a lot more even more of a Burger King jet, as in you can have it your way. So again, it's probably worth your time taking a look at some of how this stuff may work nowadays. Okay. Laser pointer out of the way. Okay. The default keybinds really haven't changed since the last patch, since the 3.24 or since 4.0 went to 4.1. So pretty much the ones we're worried about, of course, is turning your power on and off, turning your engines on and off. You can go straight to flight ready there. And then, of course, holding Yankee to get out of the seat, depending on how you have that set up in your options. The heads-up display has changed yet again with their canvas slice system. So their IFCS indicators are in a couple of different places now. Over on the left, you have the forward directional arrow. That is the arrow symbol for ESP. and that either shows up or is just blanked and is gone if you have ESP turned off. The one down below it, that's a circle with a dot and an arrow going north out of it. That is your couple decouple indicator. And again, when you decouple, that'll just disappear and be blank. And then for G-Safe is over on the right side near that 6-way cross with the little shield and a G over by the G meter. That is your G-Safe indicator. And again, if you turn that off, then that symbol will go away. Boost is over on the right side. This entire HUD is cockpit selectable for you to turn it on or off. If you have it, I believe it defaults off. I think most people like to go turn them on, and you can have the HUD, this entire HUD up or not, depending on per master mode as it stands now. There is talk that master modes might be changing here in the near future. So I'm always happy to just get you up to date with the current information just before they change it. Always happy about that. But anyway, if you have the HUD up as such, then your AB boost energy is on the right side. And as you lay onto the boost button, then it counts down from above and the scale slides down from above. If you don't have the HUD up, then your velocity scale and your afterburner scales are basically laying they're reduced and they're sitting across the top of these flat parts of the main instrument panel glare shield. They'll be tucked here and here with some of the other information in reduced format. And the only thing you'll really have up in front of you is the gun cross. The gun cross here is kind of hiding against Security Post Korea right there. Velocity scales over on the left side. You actually will have two little marks. You have this one that's up here top. This is your speed limiter. If you're using a speed limiter, it will be like if you have a speed limit, if you have the speed limiter set to say a throttle, an actual throttle arm, then that will move up and down to show you the where you have that set along that scalar. And then the one with the filled in square is your current velocity. So as you thrust, as you thrust forward and get moving, that will move up, and the vertical bar will fill up, similar to the way the afterburner bar starts full and counts down as you use it. That's how the velocity comes up, and obviously the velocity will come up to either where you have the limiter, or it'll come up to about where that plus is for its natural SCM limit. And we can talk more about that here in a minute. The emission indicators are no longer up in the glass. They are all the way down here on whichever MFD that you have your power management MFD page up. They're at the top of the power management MFD page and nowhere else. So where you put that, it just so happened that in the arrow, it defaulted to be in this MFD. So I managed to catch it inside the picture. But you kind of, if you're interested in knowing that, you're going to have to realize where that's at. And if you don't have your power management page up on one of your MFDs in the cockpit, it's your emissions are not displayed to you. Heading scale and the pitch ladders as well only show up when you are either in atmosphere or in and above a landing area, such as a hangar or a pad. Some distance above a pad, if you're out there using an exterior pad on a station, the heading indicator and the pitch ladder will pop in when you get within a certain distance of it. In the hangars, it's basically, it pops in just as you're crossing like the threshold of the doors, whether it's horizontal or vertical, and they will show up, and they do actually work inside there. Or when you crack into atmosphere, it will then show your heading, your pitch ladders, and it'll also show your an altimeter will come up over on the right side in between your pitch ladders and the afterburner scale there. So, and there's the pitch ladders as well. Okay. Next, the bore sight cross, right where you always left it. That is if you are using fixed. So you have you have your self status display is also auto cast if you have that turned on in the configuration MFD page, which I will show you that to a minute. Or if you have it defaulting to on in your options, then whether you're using gimbal or not gimbal, or gimbal or fixed, it will be shown up there, as well as what weapons group you have currently selected when you pull the trigger on left mouse, assuming you're using mouse and keyboard, which all of this is assuming you're using mouse and keyboard. Okay. If you're using a gimbal mode, as you can see up here where it has manual gimbal, and auto gimbals are only used in turrets. So flying around as a pilot, you don't have auto gimbals. Thank you, Daly and Jeremy, for your resubs. Those are awesome. Thank you very much for your patronage. Okay, so as you can see here, when you go into a gimbal mode, you'll realize that your gun cross is no longer glued to the bore side of the spacecraft. That will be replaced with just a little itty bitty dim circle, and the crosshair will move with whatever you're using to aim, such as your mouse. If you're using your mouse around, as you can see here, I moved that the crosshairs off about 5 or 10 degrees off to the right, and then I squeezed off a few laser shots just to get the picture to show you that it is in fact gimbaling off to the right a little bit for the Omni Sky 9s. Okay. The thrust vector indicator is no longer down in the lower left corner, and it's no longer that weird round round circular or elliptical thing that you were trying to figure out what it means. This is now simply a cross arrow for thrust right, thrust left, thrust up, thrust down, or in other words, sway and heave. It does not show surge. It only shows sway and heave. So if you sway to the right, then you'll get a white line will start filling up depending on how fast you're going in that, you're thrusting in that direction. You will also notice that will coordinate over here with the G meter, with this 3-dimensional G meter, will also show G's in the opposite direction of the way you're thrusting for obvious reasons. As you would expect. Sensors display is basically going to be dead center of the dash one way or another. They could either be in the holographic, or it could be a flat panel like that. Notice that the flat panel arrangement now mimics the holographic one too. So it's no longer that flat multi-ringed circle with quadrants. It's now just a 2D picture of the same 3D hologram in the holographic ones. Oh yeah, by the way, the other thing is, I forgot to mention here just a second ago, when we're looking at heading scale, your heading is also underneath. It's also down underneath your sensor display. So as that spins around, that like 270 degrees should coordinate with the heading scale in the HUD. I forgot to mention that. And it is in fact right there, but because of the bright white light, you can't read it, but it is in fact there. And we'll have to see what they do about that, giving it some contrast or a drop shadow or something like that in the future, so you can read it, as you can see there. Okay. 3D acceleration scale over on the right basically works like it always has. And now you have both an instantaneous G, which I believe is the top number, and a historical highest G achieved, which I believe is the bottom number in blue. So you can go, holy crap, I pulled 20.5 Gs at some point today, if the bottom number in blue says that. I don't know if they're ever going to add self-inflicted G damage to your spacecraft in the future. That would be a little bit too simulator-like for them, in my never to be humble opinion. But we'll see. So now for the master modes as they stand today. And like I said, there is chatter across spectrum that these are going to change in a patch in the future, probably. Don't know how, we'll have to see. But right now, you have 2 master modes, and each master mode has 3 sub modes. So you technically have 6. It's really just 6 modes. So first in your standard combat mode or space combat mode or standard cruise mode or space cruise mode, nobody seems to be able to make up their mind on what SCM stands for, but it's something like that. In that master mode, you basically have guns, gun sub mode, missile sub mode, and scan sub mode. When you are in the gun sub mode, you'll look because it'll say SCM gun up here with little bullets. And then, of course, you'll get this gimbal and gun groups display up above in your visor cast. If you kick it over, oh yeah, by the way, when you are in the gun sub mode, you also have a yet another sub mode within that, which is a precision sub mode. It's basically if you right click while you are in the SCM guns sub mode, you can basically, it's a ship's version of aim down sights from FPS. You get this precision sub mode. It now says fixed pre up there in the gimbals. You see that both in the upper left on the visor cast and in the HUD itself. You get some of the various HUD element data in there, and then you get this very, very zoomed in view where you can shoot very precisely when you're in the precision sub mode. If you kick over into missile sub mode, again, you can tell because it'll say SCM missiles up there. It'll have a little missile icon. And then in the visor cast of your self status, it will get rid of the fixed versus gimbal and gun groups. And it'll show you your missiles right now that you have 1 of 1 armed. This is a status bar that will, the second you kick over into missile sub mode, it'll start filling up really quick, and when it gets all the way over to the end, that means that the missile's prepped and ready. Then you can see what missile you have, what missile type you have called up right now, which is the Dominator 2. You have 3 of them left, and then the next thing beside it will be the next missile that you will step to if you hit the missile step button, which of course in this case is the Ignite 2, and I can't read the number because it's behind my title. Anyway. And you can step, and if you have even more number of various types of missiles on than these two, then as you kick over to the next one, they actually shuffle left and in a rotary fashion. So if you kicked over to the Ignite and you had yet another type of missile hanging off the board, then the Dominator would slide off the left, the Ignite would slide over to that one would be highlighted, and then the next missile after it, like a Rattler or something, would say it would be listed there. And then you have scan sub mode. So again, it says SCM scan. It has this little cauliflower looking thing, and you'll notice that up in your visor cast, it has nothing except for your shield bubble graphic, not even numbers. And then somewhere, hopefully, you have scan as an MFD page up. By the way, in each one of these sub modes, your MFDs, in theory, your MFDs are a memorized thing. So you can set your MFDs up in SCM gun and kick over to SCM missile and set your MFDs up completely differently, and kick over to SCM scan and set them up even differently. And same thing for nav quantum, nav flight, and nav scan. So the scan sub mode exists as its own sub mode in both the SCM and the nav master mode. When you are flying around in SCM anything, you have fuel quantity indicators are in the lower left in a percentage format, H fuel and Q fuel for your hydrogen and your quantum fuels. And if you kick over into a nav format, then they move into the upper left on your visor cast up there for your hydrogen fuel and your quantum fuel. And in those, they're not in percentage, they're in actual raw numbers in a digital million of unit format. T. Okay, countermeasures. When you're regardless of sub modes or regardless of master modes, when you have this up, your decoys and noise quantities and whether or not you have any bursts or salvos set is in the upper right corner as depicted there. Okay, now over to the nav master mode, quantum travel sub mode. You'll notice it because it says nav QT, and it'll have the quantum travel symbol. Again, you'll get your fuels in the upper left, and then of course in the center you'll get your usual 2 little curved sidebars. The one on the right is the energy spooling up into the quantum drive. And then when you point at your target and the nav system starts doing it nav, then the left-hand bar, curved bar, will start filling up as it calculates, as the navigation system calculates the vectors for your jump. Also, which doesn't happen in Arena Commander, so I had to go get a different screenshot actually in the verse. When you are in nav quantum travel mode, then you will also get the various markers for all the different places you could possibly jump off to, both points out in space and planet side points, as you can see. So all of those points show up, and they only show up in nav QT mode. If you kick from nav QT over into nav flight submode, as you can see, it says nav flight FLT, then your visor cast just turns into just your ship. That's it, because you don't have shields up anyway. It doesn't give you any other information in there. And you'll notice that all of the nav markers out there that you could quantum travel to all disappear, with the exception of if you have set a route in your star map F2 on your in your Mobi-Glass, then that one and only that one will still show up over here in nav flight. Otherwise, all of the rest are blanked. So you can just fly from A to B with no shields up, fat, dumb, and happy, so that some dude can one shot kill you. A good design. All right, nav master mode scan, same, just like SCM master mode scan sub mode, works exactly the same way, except for you don't have shields up. So yep, hopefully you got a ready to scan page up somewhere on your MFDs, so that when you do scan something, and the scan sub mode is not the ping pulse that a lot of us use a lot, use it like a poor man's night vision. This is like when you actually lock onto somebody, point your nose at them, and do the deep scan to see like what's inside the ship, or what's behind, what that contact really is. Not just the sensor ping. The sensor ping is not what they're talking about scan. They're talking about the deep scan for intelligence. Okay, the visor. We've kind of impossible to talk about any of these things between the HUD, the visor, and the MFDs in a vacuum, because they all are talking to each other and work together. But as you've already heard, up in the upper left, you have your own ship display, or your self status display is simulcast between the whatever MFD page you have up, if you have that one up, and it's up in your visor if you're wearing a helmet. Okay, I constantly proved to myself that you can be walking around not wearing a helmet on a planet and get into a ship and fly up to the space station and land inside the hangar and get out of the ship the entire time not wearing any helmet. So if you're not wearing a helmet, you're not going to have these visor casts for this stuff. So upper left corner, if you have a helmet on, is always your own ship display. If you have somebody targeted, then you will get that target display is in the upper right, and that is literally what you see up in there is the identical for the target status display MFD page, which we will show to in a minute. So as you can see, I got JKA Bomb 7778 targeted right now outside of Seraphim Station, and I can see that he's in a Corsair, and I can see his emissions across the top up there, and I can see his velocity is 199 meters per second, and obviously underneath where I have him targeted, it is also telling me that he's not only 11.7 kilometers away, but I also have minus 47 meters per second closure on him. So in other words, he's actually flying slightly away from me by about 50 meters per second. And I'm sitting still. So I'm sure that holographic representation is not a true side view of the Corsair. He's probably actually pointing away from me a little bit as he's driving towards the station. Like I said, his emission display comes up in your visor cast in the upper right when you have him targeted. This is what you're reading off of him. And you notice that yours does not come up into your visor anymore like it used to. They are down in an MFD if you have the power management MFD page up, which we'll talk to in a minute. Now I'm on multifunction displays. That's the only MFD stuff that can be visor cast up in there is own chip and target in upper left and upper right respectively. And you don't have to have those in there even if you're wearing a helmet. You can actually turn them off. I believe they default on, but I'll show you on the configuration page here. All right, so your MFDs can be in many various formats and of various types depending on the cockpit. This again is an arrow, which basically has two large MFDs that are divided in half vertically. So it gives you four MFD pages can be displayed on the top, one on the top half, one on the bottom half of each one of these pieces of glass. You can have one big panel like in a Mustang where the entire dash is one big panel and it just has areas that you can turn it into the various MFD pages. Like I think it has like 5, or each MFD could just be its own physical single display, single page per piece of glass, if you want to think of it that way. Kind of like the Avenger or like the Cutlass Black, for example. So sensor displays we talked about earlier, they could be the flat or they could be the holography in the middle of a kind of an open void in the main instrument panel. And like I said, we already talked to that. Power management. So I'm going to go through all of the MFD pages very quickly. Power management with the new engineering gameplay as it's starting to come in. That's the first part of it really to come in, was this power management display. So you can see that your power plants total, there's only one display for the output of the power plants, however many you have, whether it's 1, 2, 3, however many power plants are in your spacecraft, and what their total output is. So this is putting out 15 units of power. And then you basically, it's bar charts for each of the various systems. Bullets means weapons. The 3 sideways chevrons is thrusters. The shield with a shield bubble around it is shields, as you would expect. And right here, grayed out is the quantum travel, which kind of looks like a radioactive symbol, sort of. It's not, but it's grayed out because obviously we're in SCM guns. And this here is what those HUD display items look like if you do not have the advanced HUD turned on. So if you don't have the advanced HUD on, you'll just have a gun cross, and then your SCM modes and your velocity bar and your afterburner bar and your fuels and everything will be in a reduced state down here, right along the top edge of the main instrument panel's glare display. You'll notice at the bottom of the power management panel that there is a scroll bar that slides right left. So you can hold F, reach into there with your mouse, and use, you don't have to drag it with the mouse. You can simply just put the mouse over top of here and then move your scroll wheel while you're holding F, and it'll slide that bar back and forth. The other 4, there's 4 on the front half of this, and then there's 4 more if you scroll bar all the way to the other right. One showing communications, life support, and then 2 coolers. So you can divvy out power by simply clicking into the boxes that you want to set this. So if I want to use that 1 more power and allocate it somewhere, say I want it more into weapons, I would click in that box and it should add it on so they have 3 and this will go to 0. In theory. You'll also see that grayed out, there's a battery indicator of some flavor right here. And then it says 0/0 offline here in the also darkened out. So there's future things coming that will be displayed that they've already managed in the display. All right, the next page after that, this is assuming if you start on a power management page, and I'm just clicking on the right arrow to go to the next page in this series of pictures. So the next one is self status. You'll notice that it is perfectly replicated in the visor cast in the upper left. It tells you what gimbal, what you have your gimbal set to, what gun groups you have set, ammunition and or energy bank levels, and it says self status. I call that own ship because that's actually in flight simulators. It's called own ship when you're talking about your spacecraft that your pink butt is sitting in. All right. Click to the right again and get your shields display up, which will give you both a number for each shield face if you have a size 3 or higher shield. Or it will always show 4 shield faces in the graphic. But obviously, if you're a size 1 shield, it's one bubble with one. So all 4 shield faces will go up and down together because you're a size 1 shield. So that number, this is percentage. So 100% means they're up at their max capacity. That graphic of the shields is also duplicated over in the self-status display, both the page and the visor cast. If you have a size 2, then you will get the front and back shields will deplete independently, and you'll have 2 sets of numbers. And if you size 3 or higher, then actually all four graphical shield faces are actually 4 shield faces around the spacecraft. Clicking right again, you get into weapons configuration. This is where you can see what weapons you got. You can turn them on and offline. And then the 4 squares are what you can click to set up different weapon groups. They typically will default with the first one, which is the all, guns all, are typically all selected as default. So you can turn those off if you want. And then you can see that this setup has the Panthers as weapons group 1, and then the Yellow Jackets as weapons group 2, and they don't have anything set up as weapon group 3. Again, setting up these weapons group can also be done per sub mode. Next to the right, if you hit again, is the target status. Like I said, it is a duplicate in the simulcast into your visor, as it is in the MFD, as you can see here. So as you can see, I locked up, forgot what this guy's name is. He's up over here hiding underneath my title, but he is in a retaliator, and you can see that basically everything is just perfectly duplicated up into the visor cast. So then if you click to the right again, you'll get the ready to scan MFD page. I have not actually tested out locking somebody up and scanning something to see what what actually is displayed here. I'm not 100% sure anything is yet, but I don't know if it's text. I don't know if it's some sort of a graphic or something like that. That might be something I'll have to play with in the future. And then the next page to the right is your configuration page, your spacecraft configuration page. This is where you can turn on what defaults on or off. Again, you might have a scroll bar. You've got 3 tabs. So flight modes and things that you may want on or off, instead of having to go into options to turn them on and off, or key binding them to stuff. You can actually do them physically like you're doing it in the cockpit. Same thing for gunnery, aka turrets is what they mean for this gunnery. And then HUD is where you turn on whether you want them in their minimalist format or whether you want the full Monty HUD up in there. You can also turn off, this is also where you can turn on and off these visor casts, is in that configuration page. Then you click to the right again, you get your communications. As kind of really hasn't changed much. The button just now says hail. So anybody within range, or if, like in this case where I was snapping this picture, I was actually in Arena Commander. If you're in Arena Commander, then the communications is to anybody on your friends list who is currently logged in. So Walker Bait and Gunny Highway were both out sitting at the menus. I don't know if they were in the game, if they were talking to somebody or what, but they were out at menus, and I was able to see them in my communications page inside of Arena Commander, which is interesting. I didn't know it could do that. All right, so those are MFDs. And then, of course, I'm just showing you here how, MFDs could be one per actual physical screen, or it could be, one screen has multiple pages if that's the design of that cockpit. A lot of stuff hopefully went through very quick. Are there any questions from the floor? I don't know what you're doing on the floor, but if you're on the floor and you have questions.
I was going to mention something if anybody doesn't have a question.
What's up?
I was in for like 6 hours today. It ran perfect. Trains, panels, elevators, everything. No problems. Quantum system. And I can't verify, but I think you don't need to have the life support on to use the quantum jump anymore.
Yeah, life support isn't in the game yet. So don't freak
you
out.
had to have the indicator on to use the quantum on the last patch.
Oh, that was the last patch, yeah.
Yeah. It looks
Yeah,
like
don't freak out if you go onto your power management page and the life support is turned off or it doesn't have any power going into it. And you can try to put power into it and it won't let you because life support's not in the game yet. Ship life support is not. Yet. Any other questions or comments? Bullshit flags or spears?
You might have to have it switched on without any power for the quantum drive to work. I didn't fiddle with it. I just kind of halfway noticed it.
I didn't try to turn it off. I just tried to put power into it because its one bar of available power was empty and it wouldn't let me put any in. So, okay. Which makes sense.
Yes, yeah.
All right. Going once, going twice.
What's the meaning of life?
42.
7. Oh, 42. That's right. Yep.
All right. That wraps up this installment of Academics with Foghorn. Hope you found it interesting and helpful. If you have any questions I didn't answer, please feel free to contact me via email, Discord, Spectrum, or of course the comment section below if you're watching this later on. So to the best of my ability, and as soon as I see it, please hit those follow and subscribe buttons as appropriate. Comment your comments in the comments. We always like to read them, and we don't always mock them, but often do. You can find out more information about the Aurora Republic at aurorarepublic.space, or of course on Spectrum at robertspaceindustriescom/org/aurora-rep. See you next time. Foghorn signing off. Wishing you a very pleasant remainder of your morning, afternoon, or evening, and thank you so very much for watching.